get any better, he will. But right this moment, what he's capable of doing in his first, second, third, fourth ever game with this Titan squad, I feel like we saw what was close to the best of it today. Welcome into the Hot Read podcast for Monday, October the 30th. I'm your host, Easton Freeze, director of published content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network. You can follow me on social media at Easton Freeze. I am joined as always on a Sunday live recap episode by producer JT, who you can follow on social media at JT_Runke. JT, I know you just weathered a very difficult bad beat, which we'll talk about later from our best bet gauntlet. But other than that, how's your day been, my friend?
It was great until, like you just said, it was a fantastic day of ultimate highs, just all brought down within the last 5 minutes, which we'll talk about later in this show. So trying to put on my best acting face and pretend that I am not just so angry right now. But I'm good. I'm great.
We're going to put you in a better mood today because we're talking about a very happy team, a very happy fan base. The Tennessee Titans, of course, get a big win today against the Atlanta Falcons. They win. I've already forgotten what the score was. Let's see here. 28-23 was the final score. Thank you, JT. And that's really the secondary headline, because the primary headline is Will Levis, Billie Jean's 33rd overall pick in the 2023 NFL Draft. We have so much to discuss about his debut, which was about as good as you can ask for a player in his situation. We've also got a lot to talk about what this team does going forward, where they are, what's different right now than, the situation just 7 hours ago before they played that game, what has actually changed, what should and shouldn't change. All these things we'll get to in today's episode, cram-packed with a bunch of information. I already see a lot of you are here with us live, and I appreciate you doing that. Do me one quick favor. If you would not mind hitting like, hitting retweet, hitting share, copying the link, sending it to a buddy, a family member, whatever you can do to help us get as many eyeballs on this show live as you can would be considered a personal favor. So thank you very much. And I also, before we get down to it here, have to ask you to go on over to Broadway Sports Media on YouTube. If you're watching on Twitter, if you're watching on Facebook, that's great, but you're going to enjoy your experience even more if you go to Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page right now. Open a browser, open the YouTube app, search Broadway Sports Media. You'll find this live stream there. You can join the conversation in the comments, and we would love to hear your comments, questions, queries, thoughts on this game. We've already got a number of you: Kyle, Joseph, Green Thumb, Pretty Boy Kelly, Derek, already in here. Pretty Boy Kelly saying, I told you, it is in fact his day to shine. He's been on the Will Levis really propaganda train since I don't know when, but I mean, I think he's saying you, the royal you, because obviously he knows that we were, I think, much higher on Will Levis than most. We'll talk about that in a little bit. One last shout out before we get down to it here today. Our wonderful and amazing sponsors, Broadway Sports Media, the Hot Read podcast is brought to you, not the whole company, just this show is brought to you by BoomBozz Craft Pizza and Taphouse in Spring Hill. That is our home location. BoomBozz Pizza in Spring Hill is fantastic. And that is where, my friends, we're going to be having a Titans watch party this week. If you weren't aware, the Titans play another football game in about 4 or 5 days. Thursday Night Football. They'll be headed up to Pittsburgh to play the Steelers, who just come off of a loss to the AFC South Jaguars, a pretty definitive loss, I'd say. I think they were losing wire to wire, so they're going to be hungry for a win. The Titans are going to be looking to not fall apart on the road like they've done every time they've won at home this year. So see if they can stack 2 wins together. That would be nice. We'll be talking about that a lot this week. We'll be talking about that with our live show before Thursday Night Football at BoomBozz in Spring Hill. If you were going to come out to Spring Hill to see us at BoomBozz once this year, this is the week to do it. It's going to be an awesome atmosphere. We've got Titans merch and BoomBozz gift cards and more to give away. We're going to be hanging out with you guys, watching the game, talking about it beforehand, talking about it after. The definitive plans, stay tuned for more thoughts on what that's going to look like later in the week for our midweek episode. But for now, just got to shout out BoomBozz, who is a wonderful and amazing sponsor. We appreciate them. Okay, we've kept people waiting long enough. Let's get down to the numbers of this game. And JT, as far as a Sunday evening show goes, this is perhaps the least formally prepared that I am for a show. That's by design. I wanted to get on here and live with the people as quickly as possible because I knew that this show is going to set itself up well for as much dialogue, as much conversation with the comments as possible. I know you all have a lot of thoughts. I've got a lot of thoughts that I've got jotted down here. But let's start out by just looking at some of the numbers for today. Will Levis, in his debut in the NFL for the starting for the Tennessee Titans, that is, he passed for 29 attempts. 19 of those were completions, 238 yards, took 2 sacks for 12 yards lost, threw for 4 touchdowns, twice as many as Ryan Tannehill has through 6 games, by the way, and a long of 61, a passer rating final of 130.5 points. A fantastic debut for him. I would say the person most responsible for helping him out in those statistical categories would be DeAndre Hopkins, who caught 4 of his 6 targets today for 128 of those 238 yards, averaging 32 yards per reception with a long of 61 yards and 3 touchdowns. A breakout performance by a player that's obviously already broken out, but a breakout performance for DeAndre Hopkins in a Titans uniform, or an Oilers uniform, should I say. And it came at perhaps the best possible time. JT, our buddies over at the Ringer Fantasy Football Show this week, before the game, I think last Thursday or whatever it was, we're talking about players to play or to sit this week. And the topic of DeAndre Hopkins comes up, and Danny Heifetz, who we met at the Combine, says, I think DeAndre Hopkins is a must play this week. And the question was why? Why, maybe Malik, maybe Will Levis, either way, it's going to be a guy we don't really know passing the ball to him. Like, what's the deal? It's probably going to be Will Levis. Why would you trust Will Levis to get the ball to DeAndre Hopkins? And his point, as simple as it is, it rang true today. If I was Will Levis, a 24-year-old kid making his first debut first debut start in the NFL, what would I do to ensure my success? I'd probably just say, hey, that guy on my team was great when I was 14 years old. Let me just throw the ball to him all the time. Like, he was a legend when I was in grade school. Maybe I'll just throw him the ball and trust him to do the savvy vet thing. And that was a wise decision, one that was made today on 3 occasions for 21 points. Okay. Where to even start? Have you been monitoring the comments, JT? Do we have anything pressing we need to get to, or should I dive into some of these topics that I find interesting?
I mean, there's just a lot of love for Will Levis and the early hype is continuing to build here. As Joseph Allen says, the tank is off. And then Derek saying that Levis is the QB we've all hoped for. And then Plutonium Wombat even coming in here and saying Mayo Man came to collect, and saying don't want to overreact, but Levis is going to be better than Brady and will win 6 Super Bowls for the Titans. Right. A lot of other Vols discourse as well, saying I'm a Vols fan, but I'm in on the Mayo mania. So it sounds like Will Levis is single-handedly changing the hearts and minds of Tennesseans everywhere.
Well, it is funny, and I guess that's where we should start, is the beginning on Will Levis. It is so early to be taking any victory laps on Will Levis. He has played 1 game. How many times have we seen a backup or a young quarterback come in and play really well? You get kind of that new guy bump. Your teammates are playing a little extra hard for you. You're an unknown commodity to the defense, so they don't quite know how to defend you well. Defensive coordinators haven't figured you out on tape yet and figured out how to make your life more difficult. That's absolutely something that could be and may very well be at play here for Will Levis. But right now, in this honeymoon phase of his quarterback career for the Titans, which we talked about on Thursday, potentially being the case after this game, certainly the case, a fantastic performance that I think absolutely, by the way, cements him as the starter for Thursday night. I was talking to some of the folks in the media pool, in the press conference room after the game, about if there's just any chance. Is there any chance that the Titans roll out a hobbled Ryan Tannehill 5 nights from now on the road in Pittsburgh and play him when they deem him healthy enough over Will Levis? The answer was a resounding no, and I believe that to be the case. You simply cannot, after a performance like that from Levis, and with Tannehill clearly, he didn't practice at all this week. He's not healthy yet. So I think now that's not a concern. But JT, they then have a mini bye of 12 days off or whatever it is, 10 days off. that's a question we're going to get there eventually. That's something that we're going to have to discuss. And as if if Will Levis puts up more performances like this in consecutive games, then it's I think it's the advantage is going to be him, and it's going to be an easy out for the Titans to be like, well, Tannehill, he would be back, but he's still, we're just wanting to get him back to 100%. Will Levis is doing a good job, and you kind of kick that can down the road. But the second that Will Levis stumbles, and he will stumble, as all quarterbacks do, especially rookie quarterbacks, that's going to be a discussion eventually. And Ryan Tannehill does still have that $30 million price tag on his head. And he is still, I believe, even though you had one good performance by the rookie, and it's exciting, and all these things we're going to get into in a minute. This coaching staff on one performance has not changed their minds about which quarterback gives this team the best chance to win. It's still Ryan Tannehill. Now, Will Levis is going to have an opportunity over at least one more game. And if he continues to parlay performances like this and stack wins, then maybe more. Maybe he earns himself more leash to prove himself worthy of getting the look and maybe turning the page officially on Ryan Tannehill. But I'm just warning folks, if you tune back into this show on next Sunday, on next Thursday, previewing the Titans week 10 game, and we're talking about, will it be Levis? Will it be Tannehill? Who should it be? Who will it be? I wouldn't be surprised if that conversation is coming. Now, let's quit looking ahead, because that's kind of an annoying conversation to have. Let's look back at this game and react to what was a fantastic performance by Will Levis. You look at his next-gen passing chart for the day, and I've seen a number of folks in the comments already mention how there were a couple of pretty brutal drops in this game that did Will Levis's numbers no favors, did the Titans team no favors. A couple of drops that, if those drops were turned into catches, Titans may have run away with this one. Of course, the first ones that come to mind are that Chig drop on the right-hand side of the field, running that, in and out route where he's got miles of space to run. Just looks, from my perspective in the stadium, like a classic turns your head before you caught the ball situation. And it was, like we've been talking about all year, another really disappointing. I mean, I've jokingly said before that it feels like Chig has to drop one every game before he can start catching them. And after he had that drop today, he had a really impressive catch on a ball that was thrown behind him. It's like, okay, well, he can catch that, but he can't catch the one where he's got no one within his area code and plenty of room to run. And it's a gentle. It's not like Will Levis threw a laser beam at him. It was a gently thrown ball. You and I could have caught that ball. He knows he has to catch that ball. And so, again, I keep veering into the disappointing things. I'm getting all of the bad out of the way, I guess, at the beginning. Chig has been so disappointing this year, and it just makes me genuinely sad on the inside. I know what he's capable of being. He's just not been that so far. Another player that's been that way, Treylon Burks, a big drop on, I believe, the first drive of the game, where Will Levis puts it in a bucket with his throw, kind of reroutes Treylon, who is running more horizontally to the sideline on that pass, reroutes him vertically, finds an open space between two defenders, drops it in the hands of Treylon. Now, it looks like the defender made a pretty good play on that ball, so you got to give them props for that. But Burks has to bring that in. That's a contested catch situation where good contested catchers make the catch. And he's not. It's just another example, another drop in the bucket of examples of Treylon Burks not making the difficult catch when he needs to, and not showing those flashes of being a wide receiver one material. He did kind of bounce back and have some nice catches. That one catch on the sideline was a difficult catch, barely out of balance, but that's the kind of thing you want to see. It's a proof of concept ops, absolutely. You see him stretch out and get that first down, which was ultimately rescinded by a pretty ridiculous pass interference call on DeAndre Hopkins, but he had some decent plays the rest of the game. But those two are at the top of the list of guys that can be way better and are really disappointing for this team right now. Will Levis is not. And this, I'm so squirrel today, aren't I? Because I keep trying to get back to Will Levis. His next gen passing chart was what I'm looking at here. 3 of his 4 touchdowns, JT, were beyond, right at or beyond 40 yards. It looks like 40 yards downfield. That is, he had his one of his 4 touchdowns was that underneath crossing route to DeAndre Hopkins in the red zone. I believe the Titans' only red zone trip today. I think they went one of one in the red zone, which is good, but you wonder, how does a team score 28 points when they're in the red zone one time and convert one time? Well, because they just didn't need to get to the end zone. I guess the Titans were looking at their red zone woes this year and saying, we used to be so good at this. How can we got to improve? What if we just scored without ever getting into the red zone? And that's what they did today.
Big brain.
Right. I asked Will Levis and Mike Vrabel after the game, you know, you pushed the ball downfield a lot today, Will. I'm looking at his chart here. 10 of his 29 attempted passes were beyond 10 yards downfield, 3 of them touchdowns, and a handful of them were really nice passes that were drops, right? Was that part of the game plan? Was that something that you identified in Levis as a strength of his and you really pushed to have more of that in this game plan? Because knowing this team, JT, and this is where I want to turn it to you and maybe turn it to our audience a little bit. Folks in the comments, let me know your answer to this question. Coming into this game, JT, did you feel like the Titans were really going to be giving the key, really giving him the keys to this car the way that they did? Taking all of the child locks off of it, taking off the limiter on the speed dial, really just unbridling him and giving him the reins to operate as a drop back passer who takes a lot of shots downfield. Like, that was surprising to me that they didn't give him that rookie baby treatment a little bit.
I mean, maybe it's a little bit of hindsight bias, but like I feel like that was an outcome that we could talk about, or that we talked about on Thursday's preview show about Will Levis this week. I think because of just how big his arm is, like if they wanted a chance to win, they had to use what Will Levis is really good at. And that is taking those shots and being able to throw the ball downfield a lot.
You know what, JT? That's what Mike Vrabel had to say to me when I asked that question. That's what it was. Did. Yep, that's what Mike Vrabel said. It's, well, anybody who scouted him, and of course we scouted him, knows he's got a really pretty deep ball. He's got a bazooka for an arm. And so they were not afraid to let him try that today, and that worked really well. One pass in particular that I have to highlight, and JT, I don't know exactly what we're going to do with our midweek episode this week, but I have a feeling it might be a little bit to do with some film breakdown, because this is a great game to look at some of the film once we get it tomorrow. One play in particular that I know we're going to be looking at is his 4th touchdown pass to NWI, right? He navigates the pocket, leaks out to the right-hand side of the field, looking across his body into the left end zone where NWI is streaking across the end zone, running full speed. Will Levis backing up to avoid the impending defender off of his back foot, not exactly over the top, sort of a sidearm motion, really wristy, just flicks the ball 50 yards on a dot, corner of the end zone, to a receiver that's sprinting full speed for a touchdown. It was, for my money, easily his best pass of the day. It was the moment, and it was the end of the game, right? He'd done a number of things really nice up until that point. It was the moment in this game where I leaned up in my chair in the press box and said, hey there, they might have something in this guy. That's the kind of play you look at. You see those plays early from, and again, we're putting way too much pressure on the kid. I'm getting ahead of myself. I know that totally. I am, but I'm saying there's real significant upside potential here, because this is the kind of flash you see early on from the careers of guys like Patrick Mahomes, like Josh Allen, like Justin Herbert, like Trevor Lawrence. It's that it factor. And again, there's a couple of quarterbacks in recent memory you can name who had the ability to do things like this. Zach Wilson, for example. You have to remember that play from his pro day when he was coming out. He has that flick of the wrist, deep pass on a dot, and it's that kind of thing. Like, Zach Wilson's capable of the same thing Will Levis did today. The difference is, can you do it in a game? And obviously, there's a big difference between Zach Wilson's career to this point and what Will Levis did today. Now, I'm not saying Zach Wilson is what Will Levis will be. I'm not saying Patrick Mahomes is what Will Levis can be. I'm saying he's got that next gear. He showed it today that you have to be an upper echelon quarterback. Now, to be that upper echelon quarterback, you've got to polish all the other things in your arsenal. You can't just have that, which is evidenced by looking at a guy like Wilson versus a guy like Mahomes. But if you have that, you've got that potential. And that's really what we were talking about pre-draft. And this is where, like I said, it is so early, way too early to be taking victory laps in Will Levis. But I just have to say, however, I am very glad, JT, that you and I and this show, we're on the right side of history. In our, we take the draft very seriously. We are draft analysts. We went to the combine. We spent months and months and countless hours scouting these players. Will Levis was a guy we spent a lot of time looking at, thinking about. And from November through to April, my opinion, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe your opinion essentially was the same. This guy is probably the fourth most talented of the top 4 quarterbacks in this draft class, and he is a bona fide first-round talent. And so from November until February, we were lower than the consensus on him because there was a lot of talk about Will Levis, top 5 pick. Will Levis, the best quarterback in this draft class. Will Levis, Josh Allen upside. And then something happened, which we're still unable to identify the exact nexus point of this, but somewhere in there, February turned to March, and maybe the SEC venom permeated the discourse, because that's really ultimately what this is, right? The SEC venom that blinds you with priors, blinds you with college brain, and that beautiful enthusiasm that comes along with college fandom. Will Levis's last year at Kentucky, there were a lot of things that went wrong, and there were a lot of people that said this guy's a bum. He's Jake Locker 2.0. This guy's going to stink. He's a waste of a draft pick. You shouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole. And so up until that shift, we felt like we were taking crazy pills because we were like, this guy's like a mid to late round, first round talent. He's a very good prospect. He is not better than the other 3 guys. And then things got even dramatic, like I'd say like 4 times crazier than that, when all of a sudden Will Levis is a bum. He shouldn't be drafted. He's a waste of a pick. And we're like, oh, hang on now. I thought we were too low on him. Now we're too high on him. So I'm glad that we stayed steady. We trusted our gut. We stayed with what we saw on the tape and how we evaluated the player. And again, it's too early to have a verdict here. But through one game, it looks like, yeah, we were right that this guy has those first round flashes within him. Whether or not he pans out and puts it all together is yet to be seen. But he showed today what you want to see from a guy that was a first round talent, did he not?
No, he did. And like you said, it was an off season of ups and downs. But I think even if our opinion wavered, I think what we saw today rang true. And that was that he has the ability to be what this Titans team is looking for if they were interested. I think there were other quarterbacks in this draft class that also had traits that interested this team. But ultimately, you get the guy who we did think was a first round talent in the second round, giving up a little bit of draft capital to go up and get him. And today you see the flashes that can come in the future here. This is a guy who I think a lot of people kind of, when it came down to draft night, just kind of wanted to give up on already. And I just don't think that's something that can happen, right? Because you do have the ability,
of course not,
to have something like today happen. And
yes,
to your point, like Zach Wilson, I think is a lot different. Like, yes, he can do the same thing that Will Levis does, but also Zach Wilson.
He was the most dramatic example I could think of, right?
Exactly. But Zach Wilson also did throw an interception on his first ever pass, and Will Levis is throwing absolute dimes. But
he really
yeah,
only had one decision today where I was like, that was a bad one. And I don't know if you remember this or not. The pass where he's trying to throw it away in the direction of Chig, it actually hits the defender in the hands. The defender was more athletic, could have come up with it, and that could have been an interception on the day. That was a mental error on his part, and actually, I think it was kind of the right idea, just bad ball placement. But other than that, difficult to find an example of him making a rookie mistake today, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think the only other really mistake that wasn't even really a mistake, because as we learned in the press conference afterwards, Mike Vrabel basically told him to do this, is on that 3rd and 4 when they were in the getting close to the red zone of the Atlanta Falcons. When he takes that sack, it causes the Falcons to burn a timeout. And that's exactly what Mike Vrabel wanted him to do if the play was not there. So, and it's just, not to get into this comparison, but it's just kind of a breath of fresh air, because you didn't see that panic that we've seen with Malik Willis and other guys who are filling in for Ryan Tannehill. You saw a guy who was given a direction and did not waver from that, did not panic and he did his job. And I think that's one of the biggest upsides of Will Levis. And some of the comments are also backing that up here. Joseph Allen saying, I think the fact that he played in a pro style offense at Kentucky played into the decision to give him a little more rope today. It certainly doesn't hurt. And I would agree with that one. Plutonium Wombat also once again chiming in on your NWI comment saying, "My God, seeing those passes drop into the receiver's hands was so beautiful. It almost made me weep." A little eccentric,
He's
I would
excited.
say, but he is
Plutonium Wombat is
excited.
having a good day. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, absolutely. Got to shout out our wonderful and amazing sponsors once again, BoomBozz Craft Pizza and Taphouse. Guys, check them out and join us there live in Spring Hill this week when we are covering the Titans playing on Thursday Night Football. And if you're watching with us live tonight on Sunday evening, we're getting to a lot more Titans, a lot more Will Levis here in a minute. Do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that retweet button, do whatever you can to help us share the show. We want to get as many live eyeballs on today's show as possible. I'd consider it a personal favor. Thank you very much. Yeah, a couple just some numbers, some housekeeping here. The Titans obviously can get back to 500 if they win on the road this week in Pittsburgh, and that, you know, is going to spark the conversation of what does the, you know, we spent the bye week post going 2-4, losing to the Ravens in London, uninspiring performance, injury to your starting quarterback. You know, maybe it's time to pack it up. Now this conversation is going to keep ebbing and flowing, I'm afraid. By the way, JT, the last time the Titans scored 4 touchdowns in one game, you want to guess when that was?
it's got to be like 2017, 2018.
No, it wasn't that long ago, but it does feel
Okay.
that long. It wasn't last season, that's for sure. Week 18 of the 2021 season,
Oh,
they
really?
scored 4 touchdowns against the Houston Texans. But yes, they did do it. And today was the first time in, I believe, 24 games. A 24-game streak of not scoring 4 touchdowns is broken in this one. Another stat for you. 3 players, and this is, I've gotten conflicting notes on this. Apparently, maybe it's 5 players, but what I saw from CBS's stats and information, folks, is that there have been 3 players in NFL history to throw 4 or more passing touchdowns in their NFL debut. Those players, Fran Tarkenton, Marcus Mariota, and Will Levis. So 2 Hall of Famers and Marcus Mariota. That's pretty good company right there. So where to go now? We can talk about the Malik Willis thing. We should talk about the Malik Willis thing. We came into today knowing that Mike Vrabel had been on this shtick all week long about how you're going to see both quarterbacks. Okay. Maybe we'll alternate them every series. Maybe we'll alternate them every couple snaps. We'll see. And true to his stubborn word, on the first play, or excuse me, the first drive of the game, Will Levis hand off to Derrick Henry for a couple yards. Second down, hand off to Derrick Henry for a couple yards. Third down, I believe, was either a sneak or a tush push for a first down. All right, first down for Will Levis. Can he throw the ball? Well, not on this first down, because Malik Willis is going to come into the game, met by discord in the stands and a lot of eye rolling, I'd imagine. He comes in, the snap is in shotgun. It goes directly over his head. He makes kind of a Cam Newton in the Super Bowl 2016-esque. I'm going for the ball, but maybe it's a little bit of a business decision. I don't like my efforts kind of meh. I don't know, JT. Maybe I'm being unfair, and I don't like to read intent into players' decisions. But I feel like I'm speaking for a lot of people when I say, and folks, if you're watching with us live, let me know in the comments, Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page, if you agree or disagree with this. It sure looked to me like he could have made a better effort to get on that ball, secure that ball. I don't blame him for not catching the snap. No, he could have. It hit him in the hands, but it was a bad snap, a laser beam over his head. I do fault him for not jumping on that ball and securing the ball. It looked bad to me, and I'm curious what other folks thought. JT, did it look kind of bad to you?
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Like, I think it could go either way. Obviously, I don't want to read into the intent of anything like that, right? But
right.
It's just, I think, I don't know. I'm kind of with you on that one, where he could have like gone for it a little bit more,
right.
But also like it did seem like it wasn't not really knowing what's going on.
Right. And you know, we don't have to dive into the intent, but we can dive into what happened thereafter. And Kenneth saying he looked lost, not with bad intent. That, you know, certainly that's possible. The point is, he didn't get on the ball. It sure looked like he could have, and he didn't. So he's at fault. Whether that was I'm not saying it's intentional, but he should have made a better play. Let's leave it at that. What then happened was he comes off the field for Will Levis, or excuse me, for the defense rather, because they turned the ball over to the Falcons in the red zone there on the first drive, and it's met with a barrage of boos from the audience. Now, a lot of his teammates took issue with that after the game. At the podium, we spoke to Will Levis, we spoke to DeAndre Hopkins, and we spoke to Derrick Henry. All three guys, some prompted, some not, brought up those boos and gave a full-throated defense of their teammate, saying that's not cool. Will Levis said fans next time need to come correct and not do that kind of thing. The players took issue with that, and I totally understand them defending their teammate. I do. What I'm going to say, and I put this on Twitter, and it seems like folks agree with me there. If you're watching with us live, let me know in the comments if you agree with me on this. It sure seemed to me like the majority, if not all of the people booing, were booing the decision-making by the coaching staff and not the player. Maybe some were booing the player because, frankly, Malik Willis has not been very good. At times, he's been very bad. When he comes in on these gadget plays, he's been a turnover machine. I wish he wasn't, but he has been. And that's frustrating to fans, naturally, when a player is no good and they're on the field for your team. But I think the booing came from the fact that we'd been hearing this really ridiculous idea from Mike Vrabel all week that you're going to see both guys. I don't know what's going to be. We're going to platoon the quarterbacks. And then he comes out swinging, forcing Malik Willis in there. It certainly felt in the moment to me like a really unnecessary, hard-headed, lost the plot decision a little bit. And I think fans were fed up with the coaching staff putting Malik Willis in a position to fail. Because that's really what happened here, right? The kid has to play better. He does. The young man, I say kid, these guys are all my age or a little younger or a little older. These young men have to perform better, okay? That doesn't mean that the coaches aren't culpable for putting them in a really, really impossible situation, both from just a PR standpoint, because Malik knows. He knows what the discourse has been all week. Do not put Malik Willis in there. If you don't start Will Levis, we're going to riot and we're going to call for Mike Vrabel's head on a platter. That's what it's been. They're fed up with him. He knows this. He knows this. The team knows this. The coaches know this. They obviously don't care. But you've got to do better than putting him in a situation to go in there, have the fans and his home stadium be against him in that moment, and then make a mistake where he's probably in his head a little bit, comes out and is met with boos. You're you're taking out your gun, cocking it, and shooting yourself directly in both feet. Intentionally, for no good reason. Can anybody in the comments or you, JT, explain to me beyond just hard-headedness what the Titans were doing? Because they took Malik out after that play, obviously. They turned the ball over. Malik comes back in later in the first half, takes a direct snap, wildcat right up the middle. I think it's a 4-yard gain. And he is met with even some more boos after that, which Derrick Henry, by the way, took real issue with when we asked him about it. He said, on that one, I really didn't get it. Because he said, guys, we moved the ball forward. It was a positive play. Put us in 2nd and 6. Like, we were on schedule and everything. I don't get that. I don't understand. He said, I understand if you're booing us because we can't, if we're playing pitiful out there. But it was a positive play. It was a good play, and they still booed him. Again, that's just further evidence, in my opinion. This was booing the decision-making by the coaching staff, which I don't see any other way to spin it, was hard-headed and foolish.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I mean, it's not even just the today thing or the narrative. We have seen how this Malik Willis gadget, project has gone, even when Ryan Tannehill is healthy. It just does not work. And once again, it did not work today, especially when you have guys like Will Levis, who are obviously getting into a rhythm here. Green Thumb in the comments says, doubt they want their head coach booed either. Just don't boo. So that's one stance on it. Plutonium Wombat saying felt
that's
bad.
Soft, though. I'm sorry. I don't know who said that. Green Thumb. If that's your mentality, fine. But, and I was talking to our buddy Paul Kaharski, who the definition of not soft. I mean, if some in the media are toilet paper, just Charmin soft, he is sandpaper. And he was saying after the game, after we talked to these players about how the booing bothered them, he made a fair point. If they were playing in Philly, they were playing in New York, they were playing in Pittsburgh, if they were playing in Washington, if you're playing in one of these other markets, they'd be they'd be crucified. They'd be killed with boos on a regular basis, on a game to game basis, in games where you still win the game. Like, you gotta, like, fans have every right to boo. Now, there are times when it's classy and there are times when it's not, but if you don't want to boo, don't boo. But don't get on to other fans who spend a lot of their, I mean, they pay where's the NFL getting all these millions of dollars? Where are these players getting these millions of dollars for their nice cars and nice houses and security in their early 20s? It's coming from the hard working pockets of these fine people who have every right to demand an excellent product. And when there's not an excellent product out there, or the coach, your head coach, who you have faith in and you're mad at and you want better for. I don't. There's a difference between boos where you've turned on somebody and boos where you want better for them. Like, JT, you and I are buddies. I might boo you if you make a dumb decision, but it's because I expect better from you and I want better for you. If you decided to, steal my girl and I hated your guts now, wanted nothing to do with you, I might boo you, but it's going to be a very different boo, right? Because it's going to be, I'm not with you anymore. I want you to go away. Don't be a part of my life anymore. We've not reached that point with the Vrabel. It's not gotten, I don't think, to the point where people are like, boo, get this guy out of here. It's boo. What are you doing? We like you, but you're doing stupid stuff for the team. Be better than that, right? I mean, Kyle points out in the comments, Philadelphia booed Santa Claus. I mean, come on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there. Like, obviously, it was just Vrabel just had this he was hell bent on committing to the bit this week, and he did it.
And he did it. I mean, that mission accomplished.
No other, like, for 2 plays and change. Like,
no,
congratulations.
2 plays.
You committed to the
2 plays,
bit,
4 yards, 1 turnover,
and you get this reaction. So obviously, if it continues, I think the boos will only get worse, and I think the outrage will get worse. Is he going to be the goofy
meme this week, where he leans in with blood on his face and his hands, and he says, "I'll up and do it again"? This week we're gonna be like, well, we're gonna see more of both guys on Thursday in Pittsburgh. Just everybody prepare yourself for that. I'm warning you. I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but I'm saying it's absolutely in the cards. It's a possibility.
I think Ryan Loki has a interesting perspective on it as well, saying anyone who ain't Levis would have gotten booed. It's time to see what you have in the young man, if he's going to be the QB or not. And I think that was a lot of where that could have also came from. Like, you came today to see if Will Levis has the juice or not. And I think for the most part, a lot of people left happy, but given how that game started like that, like there's a reason why, like, I can totally see why they booed.
Yep, absolutely. We got a couple more topics to get to before we get out of here today. Before we do, if you're watching with us live on Sunday, do me a favor, share the show, hit retweet, hit like, whatever you can do to help get folks in here and live. Appreciate you guys. And now would be the time, and this is the last call at the bar in the comment section. Fire off any takes, any questions you might have, because we got about 10 more minutes-ish of things to say. And then I would love to address any comments, questions, thoughts from you all. We can have a conversation about whatever you'd like about the Titans, Will Levis, life. Hit the comment section right now and give me your thoughts on this game and Will Levis's performance. And shout out BoomBozz, our wonderful and amazing sponsor. Come hang with us there live on Thursday this week when we watch the Titans. Okay. Two other quick things. One, the offensive line for the Titans. They deserve their flowers, and I think we're going to give them more of their flowers. Again, we've always said every Sunday it's difficult to evaluate offensive line play on a Sunday when you're watching live or watching the broadcast copy. You just can't get a good feel. You can get a good feel for the general. You can get a decent feel, I guess, for the general performance of the offensive line, how much time they gave their quarterback, how clean they kept their passer in the pocket, how well they did getting a push in the run game. 10,000-foot view things you can get. What you can't get is individual performance. And what you can't get is the intricacies of the responsibilities they were being asked to take care of, the assignments they were, how often the defense was blitzing them and putting them into negative game script situations, how much help was being given to certain, oftentimes you can come away from a game where you had a backup playing an offensive line position. And from the broadcast, I found myself doing this, being like, what? I'm pleasantly surprised. Well done, young man. Like, a sneaky good game for the young guy. And then you go and you watch the game tape, and it's because, well, they had 2 tight ends helping him every single time. He had a guy on his left and his right. It was a 3. I mean, he was literally being babysat by 2 other guys the whole time. Oh, maybe that's why the offense wasn't very good today, because they had 2 of their 11 guys babysitting the rookie offensive lineman or whatever it may be. But what I can say, again, from a 10,000-foot perspective, is that they deserve their flowers today. Absolutely. I think I feel pretty comfortable saying this was the best performance from the Titans offensive line this season from a pass protection perspective. They gave Will Levis every opportunity in the pocket to succeed. And kudos to them, whether they were playing harder for their guy or they figured some things out. They had some moving parts, obviously. You've got MPF in there starting at left tackle this game. First game he started over there for the Titans. Had a decent enough game, obviously, to give Will Levis enough time in the pocket. You had Chris Hubbard go down with a concussion, I believe. Yeah, it was a concussion, right? Yeah, concussion in the middle of the game. You had to have Andre Dillard step in there as the Titans' new swing tackle. Gave a lot of people some breathing issues, some heart palpitations. I thought we just got rid of this guy. Oh, my God, here he comes again. He was fine. And the offensive line did their job keeping Will Levis clean and setting him up for success. Now, this is part of the reason why I am interested to see how he performs when he faces adversity. Because for as much good as he did today, and as relatively flawless a debut performance he put up, any rational person has to have in their back of the mind wondering, well, not only do you have that honeymoon period that, you're assuming eventually defensive coordinators are going to get tape on him. He's going to have to adapt because they're going to adapt to him. That aside, what happens when you're facing a much better pass rush than Atlanta? Because Atlanta they've had a defense that has played well this year. We talked about it on Thursday. There are no slouches in general, but their pass rush is lacking, and they don't have a true edge that you have to game plan for, that
And
you
I
have
think,
to fear.
real quick, the biggest thing is that helped out the Titans today is that the Falcons lose Grady Jarrett in
Grady
the
Jarrett.
first quarter.
Yep.
And he does not come back in. So how much of a factor is that if he's in that game? Do we see him maybe especially with Andre Dillard having
Probably,
to go
yeah.
in there? Do we
Yeah.
see Grady Jarrett get to the quarterback a lot more? Probably.
No, absolutely. And that's my point. I mean, you're going on Thursday to face a Steelers defense that is really opportunistic. Talking to some guys after the game in the media pool, talking to our boy Junie Riddle, who is a Pittsburgh guy, and he knows the Steelers really well. That's how he described them. They're an opportunistic defense. They're actually not great, and they give up a lot of big plays, but the defensive line is their strength, and they get after you, and they make you pay in really big moments. That's the kind of thing that I think you should be worried about as a fan with Will Levis is, we don't know yet what he's going to look like when that offensive line doesn't play as well as they played today. When he doesn't have players as open immediately as he did today, or doesn't have time to wait for the play to develop downfield to throw all these bomb passes for touchdowns. Obviously, any quarterback's going to be worse when the situation is worse. But there's it's a gradient with rookies where I feel like we got close to seeing today. Let me boil this down right here, JT. I feel like today we got close to seeing what Will Levis's ceiling is right now. That's not to say that I'm capping him on this performance, that he can't get any better. He will. But right this moment, what he's capable of doing in his first, second, third, fourth ever game with this Titan squad, I feel like we saw what was close to the best of it today. And that best is very good. That best is going to win ball games. But we don't know yet what the floor is. We have no idea. The floor could be a chasm for all we know. And it's going to take him being put in, a team to press those stressor buttons, put him in situations that aren't conducive to success. How does he adapt? How does he handle his business? That's where, you talk, to take an analogy from another sport. One of my favorite Tiger Woods quotes of all time is when he's talking about how golf is a game of misses. Being great at golf is not about how great your best shot is. It's about how good your worst shot is, not getting yourself in trouble. When a quarterback is under so much stress, or when a quarterback doesn't have players getting open downfield, or when a quarterback is put in a game script where they're having to come back and not lead like Will Levis did all day today, and they're not on schedule on most of their drives, whatever it is that puts them in a stressful situation. How good are your misses? That's the question for Will Levis, and we have no idea what that is right now. And so I'm telling you, we're going to find out what that is at some point in the coming games. And that's the kind of thing that you don't have to worry about it necessarily, because there's nothing you can do about it. But that's something to stay curious about, JT.
Yeah, I'm with you, right? I think there is as much of seeing Will Levis was good today. I think Thursday is an even bigger test for him, because you're going to have an opportunity to repeat what you did against the Atlanta Falcons. You're going up
Yep.
against a defense who is actually worse in ranking in scoring. They're the
Yep.
30th ranked offense in terms of scoring. But that defensive and especially the front seven is going to be a lot better than what you faced in Atlanta. Secondary, probably not as much. So like there is as much opportunity to go out and do what you did today again on Thursday. But the only caveat there is that they've got they have the star players on defense that Atlanta
Mm-hmm.
did not have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All right, one more parting thought from me, and then we'll look at the comments, and then we'll get out of here. But I'm going to leave you on this, and this is fitting because it's how I left the Titans post-game press conferences today. This is kind of a difficult concept to explain. I think that the more diehard Titans fans are going to know what I'm talking about immediately, and I'm going to try to explain it to those that maybe have not ever caught up on this. The Titans have certain high-profile people on this team that act kind of funny, and they're kind of a bit amongst us in the media pool after games. Mike Vrabel is the number one guy. I don't know if I've ever mentioned on this show, but I talk about it a lot with media folks and with folks I talk to in real life. Mike Vrabel is funny because, and if you've ever watched his post-game press conferences with regularity, you know this. He's liable to be in a better mood after a loss at the podium than after a win. He's somebody that for some reason, and whether it's always trying to find, you hear about coaches, they're messed up in the head because you hear a guy like Tom Brady, for example, or Sean Payton was talking about this with the Broncos last week. A win doesn't feel super satisfactory all the time because you're searching for that perfect win. You're looking for that perfect performance, but a loss stings way more than a win feels good, if that makes sense. So maybe it's some of that with Vrabel, but whatever it is, after a loss, he's sometimes in a much better mood to field questions and talk about the shortcomings of his team than when he's coming off of a great performance like this. And you're trying to talk about the good things about this team, and he's kind of dismissive of those things. Other guys that are kind of like that, DeAndre Hopkins, he's always got kind of a quiet demeanor, right? Like, when have you ever seen D-Hop get really animated off the field in press conferences with the media? It's really rare. Whether they're winning, whether they're losing, whether he had a 3-touchdown, 130-yard game like today, whether he wasn't targeted once and the Titans got stomped by the Browns, whatever it is, he's kind of an even-keeled guy. And then Derrick Henry, very similar to Mike Vrabel. Kind of, I think he's been rubbed off on by Mike Vrabel a little bit, where sometimes in the losses, he's in a better mood after the game than after a win. That baseline being said, JT, we've established that for these guys. There was a completely different, really surprising energy from a number of the guys that I talked to on this Titans team after the game. Mike Vrabel was the first guy we talked to after the games, and with him, it was the most apparent to me. But Vrabel and Hopkins and Henry, all three of them, were guys that, again, often speak quietly and unenthusiastically after even the biggest of wins. They were all three very clearly excited and happy and juiced today. With Vrabel in particular, there was a sparkle in, and I'm not somebody that, like, I'm not looking to spin the web of narratives in this way or read too far into things. If you know my work, you know that. So when I say something like this, it's because I really do believe it. It's undeniable. He had a sparkle in his eye, and he had an enthusiasm in his voice, a pep in his step, metaphorically, about this team. Something that juxtaposed with where we last saw him on the field. JT, do you remember us talking about in London and talking about on the show about how this guy looks like somebody that has had it up to here and is fed up with this team, fed up with coaching what was kind of a mess. Like, he looked almost apathetic a little bit in London on the sidelines. The body language was not good. And after the game at the podium, the body language was kind of the same. This Will Levis coming in, it feels like it kind of flipped a switch for him. He seemed like a guy who was driving the ship of a team that finally had direction. Somebody came up to the captain's quarters and brought him a map and a compass, and he finally knows where the hell he's going. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but after him, then talking to guys like Hopkins, talking to guys like Henry, it's the same vibe that I got from all of them, that there was a level of excitement, that there was a level of good vibes that was really different than what you and I mean, give your perspective. You were in that locker room in London. You were at those press conferences in London. It was a kind kind of bottom of the well point for this team and for these players and for the enthusiasm. And there was kind of a lostness in the eyes of a lot of these guys. Today, it was the complete opposite, JT.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, it and it could be, as we talked about on Thursday, that it's a rallying cry for all these teams, no matter what sport. When you have a new guy like that that's leading your team out there on the charge, right? Like it just it rallies these guys together, and for them to put a win together today, like it was much needed for them. And like you said, it's it was tough. It was tough sledding for this Titans team, especially on offense through the first 6 weeks. So being able to see kind of why D Hop was brought in today, I think that's also a big part of it. Like having your guys execute how Mike Vrabel and this coaching staff wants them to execute and playing. Like when I was watching the game today, definitely, like they were up towards the end of the game, and that's where you really saw Derrick Henry get going, because that's what Tennessee Titans football is, right?
Yep.
When they're up, that's when you unleash Derrick Henry. That's when the defense is the most tired. That's when you start seeing him really get down and dirty there, and they emphasize that heavily. And then they still were able to change it up and have Tyjae Spears break off a 20-ish yard run there as a little change of pace back. And I think that's exactly the type of football that Mike Vrabel wants to play. It's almost like, and it's almost like he had that X factor element that he used to have with AJ Brown today, that he could beat you in any way that this offensive coordinator group wanted, Tim Kelly and this offensive group wanted to today. And I think that's part of the reason why, because you saw something in this Titans team that you really haven't seen for a while.
Absolutely. I'm looking at a couple topics here I've written down for the show that, you know what, we're just gonna have to bump them for time today. We'll talk about them on the Tuesday show, absolutely. But some other topics that today's happenings pushed. You know, we got the news from The Athletic about how Derrick Henry and DeAndre Hopkins reportedly staying in Tennessee with the trade deadline. You know, this win and the energy maybe changes everything that we knew beforehand. But you know, there were two ways to read that, where maybe it's just this team is being conservative in the way they're approaching things, or maybe, you know, there's a conspiratorial but not completely unfounded idea that there's a little bit of a power struggle between Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon. Something that I said on Twitter felt to me like the kind of squabbling where, you know, they say nothing, I don't even know what the official phrase is, but it's like nothing. How did they, I really am going to botch this, but essentially nothing makes things better than a win is what I'm getting at. I don't even know. I'm struggling to think of a fluid way of saying that, but you know what I mean.
You're the phrase guy.
I'm the catchphrase guy.
Dude,
You never
don't
heard
look
this?
at me. No,
People help me in the comments. You never heard this? Like
of course I've never seen.
You never
We
heard
had a
like
whole-
nothing.
We had an entire bit about this. I'm the last person you want to ask about.
It's essentially
like, a
winning
certain
fixes
phrase.
everything in football, right? That's what
Okay.
that's winning smooths everything over. You at least get what I'm saying. And this is the kind of win that absolutely I think that can calm down power struggles along those lines. And we'll talk more about that on Tuesday. And then yeah, I have some thoughts on I think there's a lesson, and you can find on my Twitter the general gist of this, but I think there's a lesson about Rand Carthon that we learned in the spring that we have unlearned, but should be learning again right now about him and the way that he operates. Very different from what John Robinson did with this team. We'll get into all of those things on Tuesday, I think, when the dust is settled a little bit from this game and we're talking trade deadline. All right, a couple of comments, JT, we'll get to before we get to the news. Yeah, I know you have some news items we need to get to today. Logan saying 10,000%. I said it after the first drive. Offense and defense had an attitude today of wanting to destroy the other team. Absolutely. We talked about it on Thursday, JT, about how this game was going to be won in the trenches. And absolutely, the Titans, I think, won in the trenches on both sides of the ball. You look at the team stats here, which can't hurt to rattle them off. They won the time of possession battle, just shy of 33 of the 60 minutes. The Titans held the ball. They had obviously more offensive yards, better efficiency rushing and passing. They had a better third and fourth down completion rate. The Titans were just the more efficient, better team. Obviously, more touchdowns, fewer turnovers. They won the game, and you look at the stat sheet without the score, and you know which team won. So absolutely, that was the case. It was a full team effort, not just to put all the praise on Will Levis. Plutonium Wombat saying, yeah, Easton is right on waiting to see. Levis is, in my opinion, Thursday will be really interesting. Glad we only have to wait a few days to see. And Joseph Allen saying, with all the smoke and mirrors, do you expect the Titans to be involved as sellers before the trade deadline this week? 17 seems more intriguing. It seems a more intriguing piece to move with Kirk Cousins going down today. Of course, Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles. By the way, total side thought. Can you imagine if the Jets had traded for Kirk Cousins like they were talking about doing when Rodgers went down really early on in the season, and then he tore his Achilles? Like, can you imagine? Anyways, brutal for the Vikings. They're at 4-4, I believe now, and they're at a bit of a crossroads as a team. Do they want to be competing or not?
Yeah, I mean they had a quarterback in there, Jaron Hall, a rookie who looked
Jaron Hall
not
out of where? Fresno State, Jaron Hall.
Fresno, BYU, some West school.
I remember covering him. I just don't remember where school he went to.
But
yeah,
did not look impressive whatsoever today.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be tough there.
Yeah, Ryan Loki saying, unfortunately, as much as I like Vrabel, he would put Tannehill back in. I'm telling you, we're going to have this conversation eventually. Plutonium Wombat saying, Burks and Chig have got to be perceived as mid at best, right? The breakout has been postponed. Yeah, I kind of similar to the two types of boos conversation earlier. I'm at the point where I am booing out of frustration because I know that they can be better. I've not reached the point where I'm booing because I've lost faith, I've lost hope, and I think that they stink. Does that make sense, JT? Like, I'm at the point where I'm still confident we know what these guys can be, what they will be if they get their act together. But their act is so not together right now that it makes it really difficult to watch them, and they're not living up to the potential.
This might.
Have you lost hope? Are you on boo number 2? Are you on the second stage of booing?
For one of them. Like,
okay. So are you dead on Burks but not yet on Chig?
Yeah. Like,
okay.
I think we just need to put some Gorilla Glue on Chig's hands and have you seen the Little Giants?
Hit the joints with WD.
Have you ever watched the classic movie Little Giants where he gets he gets the stuff and then he goes like this, but then he can't get rid of the ball? That's what we need to do to Chig. We need to do that to him.
Yeah.
I mean, this was an Atlanta Falcons secondary today, and I'm sure I'm so interested to watch the Burks tape this week because this was a secondary that kind of didn't look very impressive today, even though they have some star players on this team. And so I was just expecting a little bit more from him today. And now they're going up against a Pittsburgh team that, once again, I think has some guys, but not nearly the X factors that a team that has Jesse Bates or AJ Terrell has. So, I mean, I'm starting to lean towards what are we doing here with Treylon? I do have my concerns.
I totally get that. And I'm somebody that I think generally is I lean towards waiting too long to give up on somebody than giving up on them early. Here's the reason why I've not given up on Burks. We talked in the past about how, okay, what has he shown us he can do? Like, what buckets does he fill? And it's like deep threat is really the only thing right now that he's shown us, like separation ability, intermediate route running, just the sharpness of being a polished route runner, being a contested catch guy, being a high point guy, all those things. We've seen, I feel like today in the past couple of games we've seen from him, we've seen him show the ability to get open and put himself in situations to make difficult contested catches, right? He's put himself in those situations. So physically he's capable of putting himself in a situation to succeed. The problem is he's not coming down with it. I feel like a lot of that is mental, and I feel like a lot of that is just technique. Like, he's physically capable of catching the ball. He's physically capable of being more physical at the point of attack, high pointing the ball, winning contested catches, being, looking like DeAndre Hopkins, the veteran player on that first touchdown pass up that left-hand sideline, shakes the defender, wins the physical battle. Always commit OPI, boys and girls. Hashtag always commit OPI, because they don't call it in this league. He gets away with it. He gets a touchdown. That's the kind of thing you want to see from a big body guy like Treylon Burks. It's the kind of thing that you saw from AJ Brown. One of the reasons that makes him one of the top 3, top 5 wide receivers in the league right now. That's what people want from Treylon Burks. And I'm not ready to give up on that yet, because he's putting himself in those situations to succeed. He's just not, it's not like an NWI is a bad example because he had a nice year, but like in the past, it's been easy to kind of give up on NWIs because the dude can't separate. He's not big enough. He can't, he physically isn't capable of doing these things. No, Burks is. I think it's a between the ears thing a little bit. And I think that can come with more coaching and more time, but eventually the clock runs out. Plutonium Wombat asking if Christian Fulton had a rebound. I am not ready to say that. He didn't have any glaring mistakes today, but it was against Desmond Ritter. Says, Desmond Ritter and Taylor Heineke. Let me watch the tape and get back to you on that, but absolutely something I'm going to be looking at. Titans now have 2 best first start in NFL history for a quarterback. Yeah, 2 of the 3, baby. Marcus Mariota, Will Levis. That Mariota game, I don't even remember this, JT. His rookie year, he threw 4 touchdowns. It was on the road at Tampa Bay. It was Mariota, Winston, the number 1, number 2 rookies in game 1, week 1. A real blockbuster game for the NFL, and Mariota came out on top, kind of downhill for him from there. And then Plutonium Wombat saying that I am laying the seeds to turn heel on you eventually. Absolutely. That's what I'm looking to do at every turn. Find a way to get JT off of the show. Okay. With that, let me throw to JT. We've got some news to get into, and we appreciate you guys being with us live. One more segment for you today. Some thoughts from around the NFL on the Titans, as well as looking at how things went for the rest of the AFC South. So without further ado, here is producer JT with the news.
Yeah, one little Titans tidbit that we can talk about here first. DeAndre Hopkins now has more receiving yards and touchdowns than Julio Jones did in his Titans career.
How about that?
So
does he have more than Randy Moss too?
He has to, right?
How about Andre Johnson? Does he have more than Andre Johnson?
I'd be interested to see if he has. I gotta go back and find
the combined number. I tweeted
exactly
this.
Right.
I tweeted this like 3 weeks ago, like the D Hop versus the field of all the guys he was compared to, the old heads that came to the wide receiver, like the elephant graveyard that is the wide receiver grounds for the Tennessee Titans when you become an old guy and move here. DeAndre Hopkins defying the odds. When he made that 3rd touchdown catch, I tweeted out a picture of Rand Carthon. I said, Rand Carthon is going to tell the rest of the league DeAndre Hopkins is available before the trade deadline. The price is your kingdom. Bring me your kingdom for DeAndre Hopkins, because this guy still can ball. And boy, oh boy, does he look like the kind of guy that you would like to have around for a potentially developing young quarterback in Will Levis. Does he not?
He really does.
He really
especially
does.
when the most important pass catcher for a young rookie tight end cannot actually grasp any of the balls that are thrown to him.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
So moving on now to the AFC roundup here. Let's start with the Jaguars, who do
Josh Wiley season. Once he gets that once he gets that noggin fixed, we're gonna make you eat crow for the next 10 weeks on Josh Wiley.
Hey, I'll take it over Will Levis eating crow.
Sure,
you know,
sure. Yeah,
like,
100%.
That's fine.
We shouldn't say Josh Wiley would be a bum and couldn't play in the NFL and he stinks and I hope he dies, which was essentially that was essentially the take from a lot of Vols fans.
It really was. Moving on to the AFC South roundup here, the Jaguars defeated the Steelers today 20-10. The biggest player in this game that I thought was someone who we need to keep an eye out for. Yes,
yeah, I'm so sorry to go back, but Plutonium Wombat with a great point. DeAndre Hopkins is no longer a Titans legend because all the former Titans legends are guys that came here and stunk. So sorry, D-Hop, you lose your title. All right, go ahead, JT. I'm so sorry.
The biggest player that I think we need to keep on our radar when the Titans come around to play the Jaguars, Travis Etienne is kind of having a massive year and is kind of going a little underwhelming, like in the public eye. Like, I don't think a lot of people are paying attention, but he has a day today, 24 carries for 79 yards, 3 receptions for 70 yards, and a touchdown.
Wait, I literally wasn't paying attention. Who are you talking about?
Travis Etienne.
Oh, okay. Big day for him. Now give me the numbers.
Big day for him. 24 carries for 79 yards, 3 receptions for 70 yards, and a touchdown. Ooh. He's been used early and often, so he is having a very impressive year.
You know what that sounds like is he's playing the ATN role and the Tank Bigsby role that we all invented out of whole cloth for him in the fantasy community. And I think Tank is just, I think ETN's just doing all of it, right?
It sounds like it.
Right.
But the bigger story here is that the Steelers lose Kenny Pickett today. He was down and out in the middle of the game. Mitch Trubisky came in and looked mediocre, throwing 2 interceptions. So
right,
we will have to keep our eyes on the injury report this week. Obviously, it's a short week. So
you know what the injury was?
I believe maybe it's concussion related. He hit the ground hard and then left the game after that. But being a short week, there is a very real possibility that Kenny Pickett does not go this week on Thursday night. And so it would be the Mitch Trubisky show once again for the Steelers, which as a Titans fan, probably, I mean, not that Kenny Pickett.
Rib injury for Kenny Pickett.
Ribs injury there. So it'll be interesting to see if he can go this week.
And by the way,
either way,
I'm so sorry, but this just came across my timeline here. Injured starting quarterbacks right now, JT.
A lot.
This is wild.
Yep.
Right now, all guys that are in contention to not play for the foreseeable future. Matt Stafford, Kenny Pickett, Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill, Justin Fields, Deshaun Watson, Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, Aaron Rodgers, Kyler Murray. That is 10 of the 32 starting quarterbacks not playing right now. So just remind yourself, if on every Sunday you're like, where are the touchdowns? Where's the offense? Why is the NFL no offense anymore? Because all the guys that are important to the game are broken. That stinks, man. I hate that.
Yeah. So will be the biggest topic of a discussion, at least on the Steelers front this week.
And
Moving
Tyrod
on-
got sent to the
yeah,
hospital today.
He did.
Son of
He
a-
did.
Sorry.
Um,
Anyways.
The
Poor
Texans.
Tyrod, man. People stabbing him, going to
Yeah.
hospitals. He can't catch a break.
The Texans lose to the Panthers, giving them their first
Ooh.
win today, 15-13. The Panthers win on a last-second field goal. The bottom line of this game today was that Bryce Young looked good, better than CJ Stroud. He won the rookie quarterback debate today. Went 22 of 31 for 235 yards and 1 touchdown. Obviously not a high-scoring game there, but starting to put a couple of pretty sneaky, solid weeks together here for Bryce Young. And CJ Stroud kind of has a little bit of a back-to-earth regression game.
Well, and we heard over the Panthers just came off their bye as well, and their head coach, Frank Reich, turned over the play calling duties to, I forget the name of the guy, but another guy on the coaching staff who in the preseason, Reich and this other guy went back and forth calling halves, and it always looked like the other guy had a much better offensive feel, scheme, game plan, whatever it was. So maybe that's something that is going to be like a midseason turnaround for them and really open things up for Bryce Young in that offense. I mean, I was literally talking to you about potentially taking the Texans in the best bet gauntlet last week, and glad I did not do that because they lost outright as road favorites. Good news for the Titans, obviously, that they're coming back down to earth, and the Colts as well came back down to earth a little bit today.
They did. Not much to say about this Colts game as they lose to the Saints 38-27. Bottom line, Gardner Minshew did not look good. Zach Moss continues to be utilized and look like the better running back than Jonathan Taylor. A lost season here for the Colts now that Anthony Richardson is done for the year. Not much.
They have to be scratching their heads at this point. Colts fans, Colts, ownership, coaching staff. Like what? I don't know, JT. What is the point of their season right now? What are they playing for this season?
I obviously think that if you're still using Zach Moss as if he's the feature back, it means that you are trying to get out of this season feeling good about what you have and seeing where you need to improve next season. Obviously, I think the reason Jonathan Taylor looks like the second best back in that backfield is because they just paid him $40 million or so. They do not want to, they do not want any more tread on those tires, but they still don't want him to look rusty come next season. So I think it's a really just throw everything at the wall, see what sticks, and then fix the holes for next season.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Anything else?
And then finally, what I've been waiting for an hour and 5 minutes now, I almost forgot.
Best bet gauntlet?
The best bet gauntlet is here this week.
Tough week.
An ugly week, which could have been a good week, at least for one of us. Easton,
a lot of bad beats.
A lot of bad beats this week. You went 1-2-1 this week, bringing your record to 19-19. And
I'm afraid I went 1-3-1, my friend.
Oh, you went. Yes, I forgot about
1-2-1 is only 4 games, and I chose 5 of them.
Yes, okay.
So, yeah, now I'm 19-20-1, I believe, on the year, which is a bummer.
Not very good at math.
It's all right.
And I went 2-1-2, changing my record now to 25-13-2. However, I should have been 3-0-2 today if it wasn't for Jonathan Gannon having fire in his gut and kicking the onside kick, which goes right into Nelson Aguilar's hands. And as we've come to be accustomed with Nelson Aguilar, he cannot catch anything.
Nope.
He drops the ball. Cardinals get the ball. Instead of trying to go for the touchdown down 10, Jonathan Gannon goes for 3 points, and the Baltimore Ravens do not cover the 9.5.
Cue up that viral video of the guy. Have you seen the viral video of the guy that was like in a house fire, and and he's on the news and he just throws a stray at Nelson Aguilar. Have you seen that one?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, yeah, where it's like I caught where they were throwing out the window. Unlike Nelson Aguilar, by the
I think
way.
it's like yeah, I caught the
that
baby
clip
from the
up right
second
now.
floor.
Yeah.
Unlike Nelson Aguilar.
Well, so like Nelson, like, oh, this is uncalled for, but maybe properly called for. Yeah,
But
some bad beats there. You lost the Baltimore bet at the end. I lost the Giants bet at the end. That Giants should have covered. They lose, and so they push at 3. Green Bay was the wrong side, obviously, bad bet there. Pittsburgh also the wrong side, bad bet there. New England should have covered plus 9.5, but their top 2 receivers get hurt in the second half, and then their offense can't do anything against Miami, and so they get beat by 2 scores. Really should have been a 2-3 week or a 3-2 week for me. Turns into a 1-3-1 week, which is ugly and gross. Listen, all I had to say is I'm gonna mourn these tonight. We'll be over by tomorrow. We'll be on to week 9 tomorrow. That's why you bet the process, kids, and don't be discouraged. We talk all the time about our wins on this show because we do win. Coming into this week, I don't know what the math is now. Maybe it's down to 2,700. But coming into this week, if you had bet $100 blind with the Best Bet Gauntlet on the Hot Read podcast since the beginning of last season, you would be up $2,800 for just doing no thinking whatsoever, just hitting the button and betting on all of our bets since the beginning of last year. That's because the process works. We do our picks by process, by trends, and they are winners over the long term, not in the short term. So is this a bad week? Yes, it is. But are we also still up a significant amount of money all time and this year? Yes, we are. And are we going to come back next week with a vengeance and probably make it back and then some? That's the plan. So let's do it, right?
Yes, and that's gonna do it for our news today.
All right, that is producer JT with the news, and that is our show today. Appreciate so many of you being in here live with us today. Really, really a fantastic show. Before you go, got to sell it again. Come hang out with us at BoomBozz in Spring Hill. Craft pizza, tap house, delicious food, delicious drinks, and the Tennessee Titans with Billy Jeans himself, Will Levis at the helm, playing football this Thursday night, the biggest Thursday night show of the year for us. Live at BoomBozz, as always, at 5:30 on Thursday, November 2nd. We will be there this Thursday, covering that game beforehand, covering it during the game, covering it after the game, as we do with all games. But you can be there with us, watching the game, taking it in with some delicious pizza and a fantastic cold drink in your hand. And if you get there and enter our giveaways for Titans gear, you can get some fantastic Titans gear, maybe some Oilers gear. Oilers gear, very hot commodity right now. Very delicious brand and coloring appeal, in my opinion. One of the best, if not the best, in the NFL. You want to get yourself some of that gear. You also want to get yourself some free food, gift card giveaways for our Titans watch party. You can come and watch the show and watch the Titans with us and do it on BoomBozz's dime. That's the end of the sell. Just come get free stuff and enjoy the game and watch it with us and have a good time. All right, so do that and check out BoomBozz Pizza wherever you live. They got 3 locations in Middle Tennessee, as well as in Indiana and Kentucky. All right, make sure you subscribe to Broadway Sports Media on YouTube. I know a lot of you guys were watching the YouTube video today, and we know based on the metrics that a lot of you watch, but you aren't subscribed. Guys, it costs you $0. It's free to hit that subscribe button for us. Helps us out a ton. Costs you nothing. It's a very easy formula. Just hit the button, and we will be very appreciative. Make sure you're also subscribed where you get your podcasts, because this is a podcast first and foremost on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and Google, and Stitcher, and all those things. Check out the Hot Read podcast and subscribe over there so we can get our numbers up. Leave us a review. Follow us on social media at Hot Read Pod on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. Get a lot of content that you don't see on the show on there, as well as clips from the show and updates on when the show is going to go live, so you can come and hang out with us all the time. For producer JT, I'm your host, Easton Freeze. We'll be back on Tuesday evening, recording live, talking on the eve of the Titans playing on Thursday Night Football about all that happened on the tape. Maybe a guest. We'll see. We'll have plenty to talk about. Until then, we will. This has been the Hot Read Podcast. We'll talk to you on Tuesday.